El Dorado, the magnificent, splendente. Wait, was that half Italian, half English? Oh no.
No! God, please, no!
So this week I'm gonna be talking about animated films once more, and I'm gonna be talking specifically about DreamWorks Animation, 3 different films that I used to love when I was little, and that I've probably seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times.
And they all grew up together in the valley, generation upon generation. Long ago.
I revisited them a couple of weeks ago and I was thinking, we don't really get these kind of films anymore. We don't really get that kind of sense of adventure. If you think about Pixar, it's becoming more and more introverted when it comes to the films that they're trying to make. If you think about Disney, it's always the same structure of films over and over again. If you think about other studios, very often they tend to plan their films around a city. There are not really a lot of films like The Prince of Egypt, like Road to El Dorado or Sinbad, or if you want to have another Disney example like Atlantis, The Lost Empire. And I used to love those films specifically for that kind of sense of adventure, for going into uncharted places, for seeing things that were kind of based on real stories, but they still put some sense of fun and quirkiness to them. I'm gonna be going in chronological order, so of course I'm gonna be starting by The Prince of Egypt. Honestly, I used to watch this film so many different times because I went to catechism, and it's that kind of film that they always use it to convert little kids because it's such a incredible, well-crafted film. And as I was rewatching it, I was just amazed by how you can literally deconstruct the whole story as like a huge important wizard kind of giving the staff of power and asking him to overthrow the empire. So I had these kind of weird interpretations that were kind of mixing Lord of the Rings and Star Wars within it. So I feel like even if you're not a religious person, you can definitely find a lot of interesting things in The Prince of Egypt. The thing that amazed me most was the animation, was just how beautiful all the landscapes are, and the film just flows effortlessly from one landscape to the other one. I'm pretty sure that Prince of Egypt is also what started my love for ancient Egypt culture and lore. That, and of course Target SG-1 that I've talked about in so many different videos. And that actually made me realize that we don't have a lot of films, or we don't really have a lot of animated movies which are actually taking place in ancient Egypt. And same goes for other cultures like Norse mythology. The only one I can think of, for example, would be the How to Train Your Dragon series, and maybe Frozen. Maybe Frozen. There are so many incredible things going on with the Prince of Egypt, and the more I kept researching it, the more stuff I actually found. For example, Jeffrey Katzenberg, he was so concerned about theological accuracy, they decided to call in biblical scholars, Christian, Jewish, and Muslim theologians, and Arab American leaders to help his film to be more accurate and to be the most faithful to the original story, which is actually incredible because it's something that maybe today it seems like a given that the research behind the film would be so well done. But this is 1998, so it's completely different. And also, did you know that The Prince of Egypt was actually banned in 3 countries where the population is predominantly Muslim? So the Maldives, Malaysia, and actually Egypt as well. And that was on the grounds that Islamic prophets cannot be depicted in media. And the film was actually also banned in Indonesia. I just find it amazing how, even though the creative team really tried their best to be as faithful as possible, there are still some things which are not gonna be well received by other cultures. And it makes a lot of sense because that story is kind of a story that reunites a lot of different people and a lot of different cultures. I was kind of surprised of how violent this film is, and the depiction of violence is specifically on point. This was really like one of those films that was perfectly toeing with the line in between being an adult animation, in between children animation. For example, the plagues are absolutely terrifying. And there are actually a couple of nightmare sequences which blend 2D and 3D animation, and they used to scare the shit out of me. I don't know why. But also I think it's because of the music. The music was so incredible and everything just came together as a perfect package, you know? And it felt so incredibly epic. But at the same time, it didn't feel like it was just regurgitating a story that we've heard so many different times. Because at the end of the day, I felt like they really managed to ground this story to a relationship between two people, a relationship between two disconnected brothers, and a relationship between two male friends. And it's actually something that is very common with all the other films that I'm going to be talking about today. All of these three films, actually the core of the film is this male friendship, which is something that is not as common today, unless of course you think about Luca with
walking. Don't worry, you're in luck. I basically invented it.
When it comes to the road to El Dorado, it's not as perfect as the Prince of Egypt, and actually when I was researching Road to El Dorado, I actually found out that most of the animators were so busy making sure the Prince of Egypt was perfect that they literally had to leave the project, the Road to El Dorado, to finish the other one. And that's also why maybe the Road to El Dorado doesn't look as perfect or as polished as the Prince of Egypt, but I think it still looks really beautiful. It has a quality that feels very fresh, that feels very genuine when it comes to representing the nature, when it comes to representing also the adventure that these two people, Julio and Miguel, go on.
The trail we blaze is a road uncharted through terra incognita to a golden shrine. No place for the traveler to be faint-hearted.
And of course the soundtrack once again is incredible. We've got Elton John, who does every single song if I'm not mistaken. Hans Zimmer is coming back because he helped for a couple of songs in The Prince of Egypt, and he does the same when it comes to Road to El Dorado. So the scores are incredibly epic when it comes to these films, and I love that. Especially because it's not necessarily as true today, unless maybe you look at Disney, because they tend to do that very often.
Ma basta avere un po' di brio, basta un gesto, sì, e così un dio sarò.
When it comes to the creative direction, people really were curious and they wanted to make sure that everything was faithful to Mayan, Inca, or Aztec mythology. Early into production, a team of designers and animators and the producers as well, and of course Katzenberg, they embarked on research trips to Mexico, where they studied ancient Mayan cities of Tulum, Chichen Itza and Uxmal in hopes of making the film's architecture as faithful as possible. Of course, the film is not perfect either, especially when it comes to the representation of those civilizations that have now completely disappeared. In the third act, for example, there is this moment where the colonizer, it was this incredibly threatening character. He was misled by another character into finding El Dorado, and at the end of the day the door to El Dorado has been destroyed, and he just goes back on his horse and keeps going across Latin America, and the film basically ends like that. But we, of course, we the audience know that if you let him go, if you let Cortez go, it means he's just gonna find the next village and kill absolutely everyone. So it's kind of a film that is consciously kind of like not addressing the genocide at all. It really leaves a bitter taste in your mouth, and of course the representation of some characters feels incredibly cliche, and there is actually an indigenous rights organization that criticized the movie for its sexist and racist themes, and also for its lack of historical sensitivity, which doesn't surprise me at all when you think about the final act, which could have been better. They could have done something a la Inglourious Bastards, where they actually found a way to send the Spaniards away.
The gods are speaking for themselves now. This city and these people have no need for you anymore. There will be no sacrifices. Not now, not ever.
Olin Tezcalipoca, director of the Mexican movement, pointed out that the movie portrays Shell as a sex toy for the two Spaniards, and that the representation of them as saviors from the barbarity of human sacrifices and from indigenous collaborationism with Cortez has no respect for history. And this actually made me rethink the whole film on its own. It kind of made me ask these kind of questions, like, who is the actual villain of this film? Because the High Priest is trying just to expose them as humans, to prove that they're not gods. He's actually one of the good guys, even though he looks incredibly creepy, and of course he wants to sacrifice humans, but that's their religious belief, so what do you want to do? It's kind of like the very patronizing white character coming to you being like, your ways are disgusting and not modern at all. You should definitely give up hundreds if not thousands of years worth of culture for something that we like. And I feel like these kind of details, when it comes to the script itself, it must be production mistakes that have come up just because so many people were actually still involved in the creation of the Prince of Egypt, and El Dorado ended up being just a fun adventure movie instead of being something that could have been literally the Prince of Egypt for those other cultures, which is a bit of a shame. I still really enjoy the movie because of how incredibly colorful it is and beautiful to look at still today. I really enjoy the humor. I really find the two main characters incredibly funny, especially when they use that weird bit when they start arguing with each other and then they just...
You better give them that money back or I'll...
On guard yourself. I will give you the honor of a quick and painless death.
When it comes to animated movies starring pirates, of course there are not that many, and Simbad is actually an IP that is incredibly dense because it's been adapted for maybe the entire history of cinema and across so many different countries and cultures, and there are so many different interpretations of it. So once again, it's a property that had a lot of potential, and some of it is incredibly good, some of it is kind of mediocre. Once again, the friendship at the very core of this film is very interesting. There are a lot of really fun action sequences and the effects are still so beautiful today. I especially like the villain because she isn't really a villain. It kind of reminds me of, I mean, the thing that Greek gods do all the time, which is just like, oh, I'm bored, I'm just gonna be fucking with the humans, why not? Which is something that is so funny and so interesting to see as well on screen.
I pull one tiny thread and their whole world unravels into chaos. Glorious chaos.
And I think I'm gonna like it here.
This film here is a bit more creepy when it comes to representing sort of like the men and women relationships. There is this one woman who is promised to marry one of the main characters, and of course she falls in love with another character. There are a lot of different weird moments that are supposed to be taken as funny, where literally they fall into each other's mouth without consent, of course. But despite that, there is a real sense of adventure in that film that I still really enjoyed. And that's why I decided to make this video, because I was looking back at those films and I was thinking there are not that many films that I can think of today that really give me that kind of sense of epic animated adventure journey. If you think about the other video that I made before when I was talking about female-led animated movies, if you think about Brave as well, there is a lot that she could explore there and that is really interesting, but she doesn't, she just stays home. Same thing goes for very recent films like Luca. If you think back to Luca, they don't really explore that much. You've got Luca's house, you've got the place where he goes with the fish if he needs to feed them, there is the town, and there is the little tower where where Roberto actually lives, and there is nothing more. Those are the only places that are actually explored. And I kind of miss that idea of just traveling in the middle of nowhere. Kind of makes me want to talk about Pirates of the Caribbean once more, just because it's exactly that I want. And I want that kind of energy injected once more into animated movies, like the stuff that DreamWorks used to make at the very beginning. And of course, nowadays DreamWorks is just making content for babies. Of course, little children need to watch films that they relate to as well. I'm not gonna be shitting on that kind of audience.
Despacito 2 confirmed by NASA. Shrek will appear in Despacito 2.
Maybe if you think about Laika, maybe the Laika Studios is the only one that could actually deliver us a new epic adventure animated movie. When I think back to Kubo and the Two Strings, for example, that was a great epic adventure. And I would like to see more things like that. Let me know what your favorite epic adventure animated movie is. Let me know if you've watched these films recently and what you thought of them. Don't forget to like and subscribe because it always helps. I'm Patrick, and this is Torn Apart.
NASA has all Despacito stones. Despacito 9 found in black hole.